We are joined by our first guest of tonight, Jowanka Jakubek, Lalik, Associate Professor, Faculty of Law and Administration of the University of Warsaw. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine, as always. Before we begin, I need to issue a short disclaimer here in Poland, as you know, but we would like to let our viewers know as well. We are restricted by the election silence period, so I need to remind you to refrain from giving information on polls, political parties and their agendas. Just to make that clear, to put it out there. So today marks the very first day of elections in Malta, Latvia, Italy, and Slovakia. There is a sort of an air of anticipation. We know that there are more countries joining these very countries that I mentioned tomorrow. And there are many questions. In your opinion, what's really at stake during this election?
Well, definitely these elections are very important. We are currently deciding on the future composition of the European Parliament, but also on the future directions of the development of the European Union. So on the topics which will be the most important ones to be discussed, to be taken on board by the European institutions. And also we are deciding on the role that each member state is going to play in the European Union. I think it's very important the quality of the representation of every member state that will be sent to the European Parliament will have a very important effect on the power of the state and also on the quality of the decision making. So it is indeed very important to take part in these elections.
So we are at a very vulnerable, a very particular time in history, especially when it comes to our continent, something that is definitely affecting the EU member states as well. What challenges do you think that the EU Parliament, the new EU Parliament, is going to face after the election?
I think there are going to be many challenges. Of course, let's say the explanation of the challenges might be connected with the different member states. Different member states have different perspectives. I think for Central and Eastern European countries, first of all, the topic is security. So the ongoing war and Russian attack on Ukraine is still the topic number one because it directly impacts our security and the concerns of the citizens. So it for sure is going to be a very important aspect of the future decision making in the European Parliament. I think also what is very important is the cohesion of the European Union. So to what extent the future composition of the European Parliament will be able to, let's say, adjust the political agenda of different member states to one European level. So to what extent we as European member states will be able to achieve some compromise, some consensus on important salient policy matters, policy issues. It's going to be very difficult, I think, because as far as we know, there are increasing diversities, increasing challenges. Also, many topics are perceived differently in different member states. So I think it might be really challenging to have this kind of consensus in future European Parliament.
It's great to have you actually mention that, and this word cohesion, which seems to be ringing out very loudly as all across Europe as we're looking at the member states and we're looking at this EU parliamentary election. There is definitely a polarization, especially in different sort of subjects. How do you think that this could potentially affect the way in which those EU member states are going to support Ukraine, especially when it comes to security, because this is one of the biggest subjects as of now?
I absolutely agree with that. First of all, about cohesion, we need to think about, let's say, this liberal axis and the, let's say, conservative or nationalist axis. So we will see to what extent those different political families will be represented in the parliament, which one will prevail, which one will be able to gain more support and also will be able to form coalitions chance to influence the decision making. So these kind of things will be very, very important. Second of all, I think the topic of security is of extreme importance, and we will see to what extent different countries with different agendas will be able to find the compromise, to find the common attitude. We can see that even now there are very different views and opinions. Some countries are not in agreement about the common policy objectives of the European Union. So I'm wondering to what extent in the future composition of the parliament we will be facing with increasing divisions. So for example, to what extent the European Union should take on board more security measures, more policies oriented towards unifying European Union around those values. Also, there will be a topic of having the new commissioner who will be in charge of the security policy. Here again, I would expect some debates about the competences, ability to influence the European Union policies. So we will see about that. Well, to conclude, I think that it is very, let's say, important to closely look at the diversity of the member states, because what we can find in the end of this process might be the Europe of different speeds. So some of the countries might be willing to move forward with some policies, and some of them might not be ready for that, or even directly oppose those kind of policies.
Well, like in any binding relationship, it takes two to tango, or more, or multiple. So it's going to be important for them to actually find some sort of a consensus. What do you think that the revamped EU Parliament, what steps will it have to take when it comes to improving and addressing security and hybrid warfare, a big subject that we've been covering here on TVP World in the weeks leading up to the election?
Well, for sure that there needs to be a debate and let's say finding common ground, common understanding on how to address those concerns. And I think I'm afraid that there is no real agreement about all the European Union member states. So here in our region, we have, for example, Hungary, who is not in line with addressing the Russian aggression in the same way that other Eastern and Central European countries. Also, Slovakia is hesitating when it comes to the policy choices. That is, let's say, my opinion on the recent months and the declarations of the Slovakian government. So here, for sure, we will need to find some, let's say, way how to move forward with this kind of agreements and this kind of understandings. For sure, also, what the European Union Parliament will need to address is the situation in the neighborhood of the European Union. So currently, the situation in Georgia is developing in a very, let's say, difficult way. So we need to observe that and also to have a conversation towards situation in Georgia. Ukraine is increasingly important of first of all stopping the war in Ukraine and assisting Ukraine in all the necessary way to repeal the Russian aggression. But also we are starting the process of Ukraine joining the European Union in future. So here again, it will be a lot of effort to assist Ukraine to first of all try to reform the public administration and also try to address the European policies, which are very important to be also accepted at the national level. So there will be many challenges. I'm sure that some of the policy ideas will need to be agreed among the member states. And what is very important is to try to find a common platform between different policy agendas, between different policy views. So it's not only two to tango, but a lot of more partners and a lot of more platforms to agree on.
Definitely a challenging but an interesting time to be looking at this EU parliamentary election. We will be reporting more. Jowanka Jakubek, Lalik, thank you so much for joining us in the studio and for your invaluable insight.